Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we are revisiting the Temur Battlecrier combo deck, which picked up Balin, Loremaster from the Hobbit, a 5-mana 4/4 with a new storied mechanic, saying if we control 3 or more artifacts, legendaries and or sagas at any point, we have an enduring story for the rest of the game. So that's similar to the City's Blessing. Once we have it, it can no longer be taken away from us. And then whenever Balin or another dwarf we control enters, we get to discard our hand, and then we get to draw X cards, where X is the number of cards discarded this way. If we also have an enduring story, Balin gets to deal X damage to each opponent. So Balin is pretty useful, as it's not only a combo piece that will act as our finisher, but it also helps us dig for the missing combo pieces by discarding our hand and drawing. And then the main card we want to pair Balin with is a Devastating Onslaught, ideally for X equals 2 or more, creating X tokens that are copies of target artifact or creature we control. Those tokens gain haste, and at the end of our turn we have to sacrifice those tokens as well. So the idea here is that if we make 2 additional copies of Balin, we very briefly control 3 legendaries, giving us an enduring story, even though we only get to keep one of those Balins on the battlefield, but we still get to trigger all those Balins, and since they all see each other entering the battlefield, we get a ton of these enter the battlefield triggers, where Balin also triggers of other dwarves entering, and then with all those triggers and an enduring story, as long as we have a couple cards in hand to discard and draw repeatedly, we can burn the opponent out. So that's really our deck's game plan. Instead of Balin, we can also combo with a Railway Brawler. If we play Brawler into an Onslaught for X equals 2, now we're attacking with a pair of 20/20 Tramplers, which is usually enough to win the game as well. The Brawler just doesn't have the utility of discarding and drawing, so it doesn't help us find the Onslaught necessarily. And then we've got our enablers with a Temur Battlecrier, giving us a bigger discount for every 4-powered creature we control. Also very nice in multiples, since then it becomes trivial to cast our expensive spells, and we can potentially cast Onslaught only tapping a single red to still get a bunch of copies, especially if we also target the Trailblazer, which is another 4-powered creature for Battlecrier, and also helps us draw additional cards whenever a 4-powered creature enters. So now with Trailblazer on the battlefield, whenever we resolve these Balin triggers, we'll also get to draw a bunch of extra cards with Trailblazer first, so we have enough fuel to make sure we can burn the opponent out. And then the Trailblazer also makes mana when it enters, so that also makes it a nice target to copy with Onslaught, as it will not only draw a bunch of cards, but also give us some replacement mana. And then if we combine that with Battlecrier, we can usually combo off in one big turn. Then the World Wagon gives us a bit of ramp, while also still being a vehicle that can be crewed into another 4-powered creature to give us a bigger discount with a Battlecrier. And then the Quantum Riddler is also perfect here, as something we can warp for 2 mana to draw, later cast from exile in the grindy matchups. And if Quantum Riddler's in play, whenever we discard our hand with Balin and draw, we'll get to draw 1 additional card thanks to the Quantum Riddler. So then with every iteration of the loop, we're not only up on cards, but we're also dealing more damage each time. And then the Spider Manifestation is also great in a deck with a lot of 4+ mana cards, like the Quantum Riddler, letting us untap the Manifestation each time, so that also makes it easier to combo off. And then Lenor Elves for some more mana acceleration, 2 copies of Bounce Off just to have a cheaper removal spell to deal with some of the mono-white aura decks in the format, but that's still going to be a pretty tough matchup for us regardless. And occasionally against control we can also bounce our own creatures with it against opposing removal spells. And then Stock Up as another nice card draw spell that can help us assemble the missing combo pieces. And then our mana base needs Starting Town, since we're a 3-color deck, so this is a necessary evil. And then we also want to have a lot of green sources that still tap for blue or red, so if we go turn 1 Elves, we can still play a turn 2 Battlecrier, so that's why Breeding Pool, Sanctum, and Stomping Ground are so important. And then a few more blue-red dual lands, as well as enough basic lands to get value off our Lumbering World Wagon. Again, prioritizing Island and Mountain, since going turn 1 Elves off a forest will not let us cast a turn 2 Battlecrier. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with a promising hand. Just need a bit more card draw. We've got all the mana taken care of. So turn 2. Good start with a World Wagon, facing what seems to be the life gain deck. So yeah, opponent can also build up a pretty scary board. We need to kind of go over the top, hoping to damage them directly with our dwarf. Yeah, I don't think World Wagon is necessarily interested in attacking. So I could start with the Battlecrier. Again, I don't expect him to have any removal. So then my creature should be safe. But yeah, this is not a matchup where we want to be light on card draw. Found Balin, perfect. So this turn, I think I prefer a World Wagon plus Manifestation over another Battlecrier. Because then crewing the World Wagon with Battlecrier gives us another 4-powered creature as well. And what's going to be the bottleneck? Normally it's a red. Yeah, I guess I'll get another mountain. So we do still want to draw a 4th land. Opponent flashes Integra. One of their only instant speed plays, so if you're familiar with the deck, it's pretty telegraphed. Now Sanctifier. So we should have at least 2 more turns here before our opponent's attacking for lethal. They will be gaining a bunch of life, of course. So I may need more than 20 damage off the Balin trigger to win. For now, we'll take it. And a Riddler, the draw. Okay, so this is where we have to maybe start doing some math. I can plot or warp the Riddler, tapping Manifestation so it untaps. So then we only spent a blue mana to get another 4-powered creature on the board. Now World Wagon still doesn't help with the Battlecrier. But then, yeah, we could already go for Balin to discard draw. We get to draw 1 more thanks to the Riddler. I guess we even net mana here, since warping Riddler's only a single blue to begin with. So yeah, that seems like a good starting point. Draw Trailblazer, which is excellent. So play Trailblazer normally, making an extra blue perhaps, and then cast Balin. And then I could draw and then discard. Okay. Draw an extra from Quantum Riddler, and there's a devastating Onslaught. So that should do it. Onslaught for x equals 2, can do for 3, I think. Yeah. So, plenty of Balin triggers to go around, and I could also stack the Trailblazer triggers first. So we have even more cards in hand, but yeah, in this case it's not gonna matter. Still plenty of cards in library. So with every time we discard, we draw 1 more, thanks to the Riddler. So that also makes this combo a lot more powerful. And if we're at any point close to decking, we can decline to discard and draw. So there's no danger here. And there we have it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. Turn 1 Elves, turn 2 Battlecrier, or I guess it doesn't quite work out with the Stormcarved Coast here. So we'll need to draw another untapped land. But yeah, turn 3, I guess we'll be able to cast a Battlecrier, add another Elf to the board in the meantime. And then Stock Up can help us find the devastating Onslaught. Opponent Sultai colors. Looks like the Reanimator deck. There's Onslaught. So now it's all about getting Balin on the battlefield. This turn, I guess we can still go for a Battlecrier. Or I can stock up to hit my land drop, which is probably safer. Find 2 lands. Could also go land Lenor Elves. Yeah, there's no world where I can play Balin and Onslaught for 2 in the same turn, is there? Let's just grab 2 lands then. Wistfulness can draw this card. And they've got the Bringer of the Last Gift already in the graveyard. I don't know if they'll feel inclined to wipe the board if I play Balin and that's it. If I go for Battlecrier, then maybe they feel a bit more threatened. And then I guess there's a situation where I can maybe, with a discount from Battlecrier, still go Balin into Onslaught for 2. Especially with the Riddler kind of functioning as a ritual effect. So then maybe the play for now is Battlecrier into stock up. And then if they wipe the board, we still have Balin and Onslaught. If not, we maybe have the tools to figure out a win. So then here, a bounce off to bounce my own creature is also an option. Having enough red mana could also certainly be a bottleneck, but I can also take the land. And then, yeah, what else would I like? Let's just grab another Battlecrier here. Play this tapped. Because now I have 4 red, so I could cast another Battlecrier. And then I would get a 4 mana discount on all my spells. So then I can still go Balin into Onslaught. Although of course I also need to make sure I have enough cards in hand for Balin to be lethal. So that's where having the Quantum Riddler in play would also help. Because then every time we discard we get to draw extra. Alright, opponent taps out for a Town Greeter. So next turn they're certainly going to go for a Bringer through Superior Spider-Man. Trailblazer is the draw. Okay, so I have to do a bit of math. So play Battlecrier, I have 4 mana left. Loremaster, I have 2 mana left, and then Onslaught. And then I can sneak a Riddler into play as well. Assuming the colored mana works out. I have too much green and not enough blue and or red. But I guess the Trailblazer could filter. And yeah, opponent just conceded here. Felt a bit premature. But yeah, I think if we go Battlecrier, then Trailblazer for 1 filters into blue. Then Warp Riddler. And then Loremaster into Onslaught. We might get there. Although, of course, my initial hand's going to be pretty empty, so the first couple Balin triggers are not going to deal a lot of damage. But then we slowly refill our hand with the Riddler. The Trailblazer also helps with that when 4-powered creatures enter. So then, yeah, I think we might actually have enough to go all the way. But yeah, opponent didn't know that, so they should have stuck around. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand. Got Battlecrier, Trailblazer, and Balin, the foundation of the deck. Also reasonable to start with a starting town in case we draw more fast lands. Opponent on maybe the Mardu discard deck. So they might have a couple removal spells, usually only a handful between Erode, Requiting Hex, and Burst Lightning. But they can also be pretty fast out of the gates. And they're still running a version with a flail, So then they're also likely to have the Phoenix, which they could already bring back on turn 2. It's going to be Bloodghast discarded instead. Take 4. And maybe I don't need to play Starting Town when we have 2 other red sources. I can save myself the damage. And then, yeah, Battlecrier might get eroded, but then we would still get an extra land out of it. Definitely has the highest upside if it survives. And there's Moonshadow. Bloodghast returns. Doesn't have haste just yet. Flail, usually not amazing in multiples. But yeah, that shark is attacking for 7. Opponent down to 1 card in hand. Okay, so we do need to make a move here. Could go for another Battlecrier into Trailblazer. Then I do not get to draw any cards. And then the Trailblazer maybe would have to chump. Could also go for Trailblazer into Battlecrier. I guess that makes more sense here. And then at least I'll get a card out of it. And I could also decide to now go for Balin instead. If I make a red. Yeah, I guess I don't hate that. And then we can decide how to chump next turn. Depending on what we draw. Found Onslaught, perfect. So now I just need to have 5 mana, enough cards in hand, and Balin. So the Trailblazer, for instance, could chump. Opponent moving the Flail, so they can maybe present more lethal threats. All onto the Moonshadow makes sense, as it has built-in menace. So then I can take 7 and double block the Moonshadow. So, yeah, I mean, we have to double block. I could keep Battlecrier alive, but yeah, we're not going to be able to attack for lethal with our opponent at 17. So I think this is still my best course of action. And then I guess we do get a free block on Bloodghast, so I can actually shock in the Stomping Ground. Alright, that makes it easier. Alright, and even drew a Painless Land. But we should have been fine either way. So now we only have 3 cards in hand, but we should generate enough triggers, and especially with our opponent at 17, where we can still attack them for 4. And we should get there. But yeah, it was definitely pretty scary there for a second. But yeah, that shows why Balin is so important, not only being a win condition, but also helping dig for whatever missing combo pieces we need. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a functional hand. It's not particularly amazing, but could work out. Turn to Manifestation, might get zapped. Opponent plotting a Slick Shot. Yeah, this is probably not going to be a great matchup for us. Now, Manifestation does have reach, but the odds of a 2-2 surviving against a red deck are pretty low. So then the Slick Shot can apply a lot of pressure. Brawler also has reach, so that could also be a useful blocker for us. Currently missing a 3rd land. Alright, opponent not going for it yet, so possible it's more of a fling build that wants to one-hit KO us, which is also quite scary. But yeah, I guess this turn I could go Battlecrier into another Manifestation, so we still have a reach creature on defense at least. And we significantly develop our board as well. So then Next turn we can potentially get the Brawler down. Alright, there's a Slick Shot. Could also just be dead here to a flurry of pump spells. And given that our opponent hasn't done anything so far, I have to assume that they've got a lot of pump spells in hand. Turn Inside Out would be fine, they get to manifest. But they might have a trample trick. Full Bore doesn't give trample yet. But there's a Dreadmaw Ire, so if their last card here is a Sellsword to fling Slick Shot, we are very dead. And I think they have it. But yeah, as I've said, this is a pretty tough matchup, since you really need a lot of instant speed interaction to easily beat them, and that's not something our deck is packing. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. Got the early bounce off in case we need some interaction, and then Trailblazer can set up Balin. Probably should have started with tapped Breeding Pool in case we need to bounce off next turn. Opponent's got the Duress, so that can take my bounce off. And sure, I guess we'll go tapped Breeding Pool here. Could get punished if I draw another starting town. Opponent a blue-black. And the rest is gonna miss. Maybe they just wanted to fill their graveyard. Yeah, Battlecrier's nice. So could start there. Sure. That way, if our opponent keeps up a counterspell, plotting Trailblazer works out a bit better. And our opponent's just gonna Heartless Act right away. Alright, so then plot Trailblazer, play tapped Sanctum. And next turn we can run out Balin, drawing an extra card of Trailblazer perhaps. Can make a red. And then I don't even think I want to play a land first. If this resolves, I'm happy to discard 3. Could have also drawn first and then discarded. But that might have actually been worse if we drew into a good card. So we've got Onslaught, so if our opponent ever taps out Onslaught for x=2 on Balin, should be lethal, depending on how many cards we have in hand. They went for a kicked Consult. And a Sweeper seems somewhat likely. Day of Black Sun for 3. So Balin's still in play. So I can just Onslaught for x=2 here. We'll very briefly get an Enduring Story, but since it stays around afterwards, it doesn't matter. And then take action, discard 3, draw 3, dealing 3 each time. And then we still get an attack step. And that's going to be just enough here. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We've got a functional hand, especially if Spider Manifestation survives. Have a bit of interaction with Bounce Off. And then hopefully draw another land so we can plot a Brawler. Our opponent maybe an equipment deck. And Battlecrier was also a nice pickup. And Voice of Victory is next. Found Balin, so yeah, we've got multiple win conditions. Now plotting Brawler does not get the discount from Battlecrier, so still hoping for a land here. And should specify a non-starting town land, since this one will enter tapped. Kellon can tutor up aura and equipment cards. And gets another Tentacles. Maybe they're warping the Hellkite, which will pick up the 2 Tentacles. Found another Battlecrier instead. So, I mean, bouncing the Voice is an option. Keeping up Bounce is not gonna work because of Voice's ability. So I guess we'll just keep it simple and cast another Battlecrier. And then I could attack for 4. I don't think the damage matters, since we can easily present more than 20 damage. So then maybe the extra blocker is useful. A third Tentacles into the Hellkite. So yeah, that's going to pick up all 3 of those tentacles. And basically attack for 16 in the air. They can still send in the voice, so that would put me to 1. Okay, we still stay at 2 life, so then I can still at least tap Starting Town for colored mana. And yeah, can we present lethal with a Spider Manifestation and double Battlecrier? I think that's feasible. Get to play Balin, and then no need to discard anything, untap Manifestation and cast Onslaught for X equals 2. And that's all we really need. So we'll decline, and then Onslaught for 2. Very briefly get an Enduring Story, but the Enduring Story endures, and then now we can start discarding, dealing 4 with each trigger. Can finally hit my land drop, but of course we're just gonna keep accepting. So yeah, opponent had an impressive turn, but couldn't quite get the job done. So staying back with the extra Battlecrier might have saved me. And there we have it, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand. Coast will enter tapped, so ideally find another land first, so we can play a turn 2 World Wagon or Battlecrier. And we found it, but opponent could also have a burn spell here. It's going to be an opt. So then turn 2, Battlecrier does have the highest upside if it survives. Opponent bouncing the elves, so that'll make it pretty straightforward. And a death to our enemies. So opponent may be more of a burn deck. Okay, this turn, do we want a World Wagon or Battlecrier? We have the 2 combo pieces in hand, so it's just about having Balin survive and having enough cards in hand. Yeah, maybe World Wagon makes more sense if we think Battlecrier might get burnt. And then normally red mana is the bottleneck, but in this case we should be fine. Still have bounce off available just in case. Okay, opponent keeps up 3 mana. Could just go for Balin, which crews the World Wagon, and then the next turn we could set up lethal. If we want to play around interaction, we can take a slightly slower approach with Battlecrier, which also can crew the World Wagon. And then now we've got 2 4-powered creatures. So I can play 1 mana Trailblazer. And then I can still play Balin. So I guess that's the best of both worlds. And then I don't think I want to discard since we already have the Onslaught. And then I also don't think I want to necessarily play another land out, because I want to have enough cards in hand for Balin to be lethal with Onslaught. I guess, let's see, I can still go land into Onslaught and then try and combo right now, but then I would only have 2 cards in hand. I guess with a Trailblazer we're still maybe fine. Let's see, opponent's at 15. Yeah, I think actually try and go for it since it didn't seem like they had anything in hand. So then X equals 2. Okay, and then we want to make sure to first draw with the Trailblazer and then resolve all the Balin triggers. Because then we go back up to 4. And then now we can discard and deal damage. Well, I did not expect to win this turn, but yeah. Opponent was not holding any removal, it seems, so may as well. But yeah, that shows the explosive potential of a Temur Battlecrier. And there we go, awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a promising hand. Got Elves, Battlecrier, Trailblazer. Manifestation can generate more mana. So we're just missing a real win condition. And of course Devastating Onslaught would be great. Copying Trailblazer can be a way of drawing a ton of extra cards and generating additional mana. Opponent's got a Duress, which is gonna miss. So do we like turn 2 Battlecrier or still Manifestation? Battlecrier is the more mana efficient option for sure. Yeah, and blue could also be a bit of a bottleneck. Now with the Quantum Riddler. It is blue-black. And they're gonna hex the Elves. So I assume they top decked that, otherwise they probably would have taken out the Elves on turn 1. Okay, so we can make some plays here. Play Trailblazer for 2, and then still warp a Riddler. Seems fine. Could also do it in the reverse order. Warp Riddler for 1, play Trailblazer for 1, and then I can still play Manifestation. Does mean drawing 1 fewer card. So yeah, I think this is better. Can make a blue. Actually, I should have played Manifestation and then warped the Riddler, and then I could have stacked the Riddler trigger before the Trailblazers, so Riddler would have drawn 2. Since we only had 1 card in hand at that point. So yeah, I could have drawn 1 more here. Picked up a Railway Brawler, so if we want to play around a sweeper, we can plot this. Okay, opponent actually Grixis Colors, or maybe this is the multicolor control deck. That's playing that 6 mana Converge card. Okay, so with that in mind, is there anything we prefer doing? Starting with Brawler and then going Riddler is probably fine, because their sweeper's at 5 mana, not 4. So then, play Brawler, Manifestation untaps, and can cast a cheap Riddler or Onslaught. So Onslaught, can I do it for X equals 2? That would just be lethal here. And yeah, with a 3 mana discount, that works. Target the Brawler. And those will all trigger. The default order is fine. Ends up in a pair of 2020s. So those can just attack for lethal here. Alright, that was impressive. Turn 4 kill. So yeah, we got to see this updated version of the Temur Battlecrier combo deck in action. Now of course a lot of the key pieces from this deck will rotate out in about 6 months with the next big standard rotation. All the cards from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, including the Trailblazer. So without it, I'm not sure if the deck is still going to function, although we do still have some core pieces like the Battlecrier itself, the Onslaught and Balin. So it's possible that some form of this deck will still exist after rotation. But for now, the deck seems like a lot of fun, so if you maybe had the previous build of the deck, you can give this updated version a try. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.